In 2022, Apple was asked by some sort of social activist group that held a couple of shares to adopt racial equity audits, to tell the investors, just tell the investors what they want to know. Apple's board said this is nonsense. Okay, it's going to be a waste of our time and money. It's going to create litigation risk. It's going to restrict our ability to hire for the very best. No, we, the board of directors of Apple, don't want to do it. Nonetheless, BlackRock and State Street and a number of other asset managers vote for that proposal anyway, after which Apple's board of directors says, okay, all right, well, we got to reconsider now do the racial equity audit. To me, the idea that that is just a private business making decisions without external influence, because BlackRock's voting that way in part because their clients, like CalPERS and the state of New York, demand they behave that way, yet those clients aren't really profit motivated alone, they're also solving for governmental objectives, suggests that a lot of this basis for corporations doing it, you're saying that that just reveals that it's in their best interest, I don't think is actually true.
This is America.
Because they're being pressured to do it by government actors. That's the point.
I know you think there's all these ideological perpetrators, right?
I do.
Where they're out there. Yeah, obviously. And so, but there's some other things that have to happen behind all this. One, the people at CalPERS, the person in charge has got to get the return or they lose their job, right?
They don't, though. So, at CalPERS, that's the whole point. Because they do if they're at like a hedge fund like the one that you started or the one that I worked at.
Okay, well, let's just say.
But at CalPERS, that's the whole problem.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Managerial class.
You would think.
In the government.
You would think, I know, that
civil
more
service
ideological
protections and all of
perpetrators.
that,
Yeah,
right?
I know, more ideological perpetrators.
They can't be fired. I mean, if somebody's not doing a good job, I'd love to fire them. In the government, you can't do it, which is unfortunate.
I'm pretty sure that the head of CalPERS, there's been turnover there, but I don't know for certain.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just put them aside. BlackRock, obviously they have to perform, or Larry Fink is going to fire them, or people are going to pull their money, and that's one. Two, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not positive, that CalPERS doesn't own more than 5% of Apple or any company, do they?
CalPERS does not directly. No, they invest in BlackRock and Vanguard. But they invest,
so indirectly.
But together, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard own about 20% of most public companies, or 15
not
plus
of most of the total market cap.
Of total market cap adjusted. Yeah, but you could even add other firms like Invesco that also are played by the same.
Right. But I don't think they own more than 5% because all the rules of how they participate.
Yeah, it'll be single digit percentages for each of these firms.
No, but once you go beyond 4.99999, all the rules change, right?
Sure.
Because you've made. So my point is, they're small. They're not so big. Now they're influential, so they have a lot
like
of influence.
8-9% in certain cases, but not single digit is your point.
I don't know for sure, right? But let's just say that still goes to the heart of how do you value a company, right? There's a couple ways to value a public company. It could just be supply and demand, which means the more demand you create for the stock, the price goes up, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the discounted net cash flows of the net present value of the discounted net cash flows, right, which go into determine the stock price if you do it on Benjamin Graham type style, right? That's what makes decisions.
That's what should make the decisions. I agree with that.
Right, but it does. Look, when you have these variables,
I think you have a lot of
as much as you want to make these guys, as much as you want to make these. So you've got CalPERS. And you've got some other large states. State of Texas does it the exact opposite way. They put their finger on the scale, by saying banks can't do this, banks can't do that. So it goes both ways. But the realm of the world today, or the country today, is we're letting states make those decisions. And so if you want to take Texas not allowing companies to invest, or not allowing banks to have DI pros or whatever.
Gas, whatever. Yeah.
Right, whatever it is. Right? It goes both ways.
It's a longer discussion.
Let me finish.
I like this.
But let me just finish that real quick.
Stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So then all of a sudden, it still comes down to what's the company's worth. What is the company worth, right? Because if BlackRock can talk until they're blue in their face, they can make proposals till they're blue in the face. But if the company can't perform and reach the thresholds for performance that they need to, what BlackRock says doesn't matter, because big enough to get in, big enough to get out, right? So while we can point the gun at them and say, oh, this is awful what they're doing and saying, it doesn't matter.
So that's an area of common ground. This is an area of common ground. This area of common ground is actually still a belief in the market to be able to solve a lot of these problems. So actually, one of the companies I started since my time at Roivant was a company called Strive. Are you familiar with that or not? Okay. So actually, to your point, because this issue itched me, I wrote a book called Woke Inc. about a lot of what I saw as some of the inefficiency introduced by the committee class that's taken over a lot of our culture.
What is this with all these classes?
The committee class.
You got Rufo, Andreessen. Like, there's this whole ideological group that meets on Sundays, right? And like,
it's the smoke-filled room. You conspiracy theorist, Mark. So,
no, it's like all these people that went to Ivy League schools and got trained by former Black Panthers that now are infiltrating the HR departments, and they're all grouped together.
The HR department just needs some of
ways.
these HR departments. We just need to downsize them by about 80%. But anyway, what my point was actually going to be overlapping with one thing you said is believing in the market for people to at least solve these problems. So the company I started was Strive, which basically says we'll offer the same kinds of index funds that BlackRock and Vanguard offer, but without proxy voting or without shareholder engagement that favors ESG goals.
Great, good for
whatever
you.
Maximize value. And you know what? There's been, from a retail perspective, launched less than 2 years ago was its first fund. The AUM has grown at a faster rate than JP Morgan in their first year when they entered the same line of business because the market exists for it. So
you get to do that, and so does BlackRock.
And as long as we're in a free country and everyone's playing by the same set of rules without the government tipping the scales, I'm really happy with that. If the government, the problem is the government tipping the scales is where it actually bothers me, right? When you're talking
states, right? Well, different world. Maybe a year ago we would have had a different conversation.
Pension funds in Canada,
but they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to do that now.
But I do believe in the market solving problems.
That power.
I do believe in the market solving problems. And so there's an area of common ground. Here's where the market is not allowed to solve the problem, though, right? Because even if you're a contractor with the government, so even outside the realm of asset management now, anybody who's a federal contractor, and that's about 20, people think that's a small percentage of the workforce. It's a big number. Yeah, it's a big number. It's about 20% of the workforce works for an employer that could be classified as a federal contractor bound by these rules. You have to, not because the market says so, but because the government says so, actually have certain goals that you have to hit when it relates to the diversity or the demographic attributes of your workforce. That's not coming from the market. That's coming from the government. And so all my point is, Mark, is we can't just say just because a company is doing it, it's the product of the free market that's told us that's what consumers want.
You're exactly right. There are contractors who make choices whether or not they want to work with the government or not. My first company, we could have gone and we could have worked with the government. I chose not to, not because we weren't diverse or anything, because all the bureaucracy that I would have had.
You don't want the government telling you what to do.
No, it's not even that. There's just too much bureaucracy and too many forms, right? There's just that. Same with the streaming industry. We could have done contracting for them. Too much bureaucracy.
And I don't think the government should be tilting the scales. And when you have 20% of the workforce employed by a company, then when you say, hey, the company is just behaving this way because the market's telling him to, all my point is that's not the full story because you do have the invisible hand of government,
contractors
not the
don't
invisible hand of the market.